Welcome everybody to our Applying for Federal Transportation Alternatives Set Aside Funding Grant webinar. So Julie, go ahead and take it away.
So good morning again, and thank you everyone for attending. This is going to be the first of two other webinars. We'll hold a total of three. This is the first of the three. The other two will be later on, during the application cycle, and you'll have an opportunity to sign up for that one as well, or have a colleague, and then also, view the recordings of those presentations. We'll get more into that. So again, my name is Julie Seaman. I work in the Division of Local Aid and Economic Development in our division office. And I'm, again, thanks for joining us and appreciate taking the time to participate in the webinar. I'm joined today with John Koster from the MPO DVRPC, and a colleague of mine, Brian Wirtz, and also Adam Ervolino. He's supposed to be joining us in a little while. He's from our District 1 district office, and so that's our group today. So I just wanted to get into a little bit of the key dates that you should be paying attention to. So we have the application started May 21st, and we're going to close on November 3rd, 2022. So, and again, we're going to hold two additional webinars, one in July and one in September. Each webinar is going to be the opportunity to hear about our grant application process. Participants in today's webinars will be able to ask questions and get clarifications about the grant application process. The webinar will be posted for viewing after today's session. Give us a day or two and it should be up on their website and saferoutesnj.org, and then also on our DOT Local Aid Resource Center. A couple of dates to keep in mind. Solicitations went out the end of May, as I mentioned, and then interested parties can register for one of our three application information webinars, again today, one in July and one in September. You can also sign up for a mandatory one-on-one meeting with us to discuss your application through September 30th. And the grant deadline is November 3rd. Very, very, very important. It's the key. The only thing you take away today is that in order to actually get your application submitted, that you must attend a mandatory one-on-one meeting. That's probably the most, I'd be very happy. That's very, very, very important. We'll get more into that in our training session today. So, but please do pay attention to that. So our speakers today are from New Jersey DOT's Safe Routes Resource Center at Rutgers University. And again, their mission is to partner with the schools and municipalities to prioritize and implement opportunities for people to walk, bike, or travel, or utilize other wheel devices. So they help with Safe Routes, and they also help with our TA set aside programs. And we have two colleagues from there, Leanne Von Hagen and John Dugan, and they'll be providing today's presentation. And I'll be back for Q&A and also provide some additional clarifications if needed. So thank you, and I'm going to turn it over to Leanne. Thank you, Leanne.
Thank you so much, Julie. So as Julie said, my name is Leanne Von Hagen. I manage the New Jersey Safe Routes Resource Center and the New Jersey Bicycle and Pedestrian Resource Center at Rutgers University that we are sponsored by New Jersey Department of Transportation and receive our funding from. So just a quick overview. Today's session, we're going to briefly review the federal aid programs and specifics about the Transportation Alternatives Set Aside 2023 grant program, including a walk through the application and the grant application process. Plus, at the end, we're going to give you some tips and strategies to where to find helpful resources. So let me just get through a couple logistics first. You may realize that this webinar is being recorded. If you have called in, please make sure you click on the link so you can view this on a computer screen. The presentation and recording, like Julie said, will be available as soon as possible after today's session, and will be available on our saferoutesnj.org website or the Local Aid Resource Center website, which is NJDOT Local Aid RC.com. So on that note, let's get kicked off. Okay, So when we're reviewing grant funding opportunities at the Department of Transportation, they are divided into state-funded programs and federally funded programs. More information about both state and federal grants can be found on the NJDOT Local Aid Resource Center website at njdotlocal.aidrc.com. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the state funding sources later in this presentation. Today, we'll focus on the federal funding under the Transportation Alternatives Program. The National Highway Trust Fund is a transportation fund in the United States which receives money from a federal fuel tax. Every state in the country receives an apportionment of the National Highway Trust Fund. Transportation Alternatives is a set aside of the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program and provides funding for projects and activities, including on and off-road pedestrian and bicycle facilities, infrastructure projects for improving non-driver access to public transportation, and enhanced mobility, community improvements such as historic preservation and vegetation management. Environmental mitigation related to stormwater and habitat connectivity, trails that serve as a transportation purpose, and Safe Routes to School funds are separated into two different grant applications. So just keep aware that they're under the transportation enhancements. There's the transportation alternatives and the Safe Routes to School. Those are two separate grants in New Jersey. The Transportation Alternative Set Aside is a set aside of the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program. As you'll see in this sort of timeline of federal transportation bills, this often began as a federal bill established in Congress in 2012 under MAP 21, and then again in the FAST Act in 2015 replaced the TAP program, and now we have the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, also known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, or BIL, which authorized new funding for the TA set-aside program for the next 5 years, amounting to $1.38 billion nationally for FY 2022 and increasing to $1.49 billion nationally as part of 2025. So that's an overview of the whole transportation bill for the nation. Solicitations of applications and project selection are administered jointly through the New Jersey Department of Transportation and the New Jersey's 3 MPOs, or Metropolitan Planning Organizations. 50% of transportation alternative set-aside funds are sub-allocated through NJDOT to our 3 Metropolitan Planning Organizations. Solicitation of applications, project selection, and funding are administered through, this is a breakdown of the number of applications, requested amount, and number of grants awarded for the past 3 TA set-aside solicitation rounds. Funding for this program has more than doubled under the new bipartisan infrastructure law. So previously funded at $9.9 million each year, the new law provides an additional $15.3 million in New Jersey, bringing the total program funding for this 2023 round of grant applications to $25.2 million. So that's really good news. Keep that in mind as you're applying for this grant. And now the most important question first, Julie already alluded to it. These grant applications are due by 11:59 p.m. on November 3rd, 2022. There are no applications accepted after that date, and applications must be complete. We'll go into that in a moment. So at this point, I want to give you an overview of the TA set-aside grants. And just as a reminder, please use the chat function for any questions, which we will get to shortly. So let's just jump right into the basics. So what is the purpose of transportation alternative set-aside, also called as TA set-aside? The program awards community-based transportation projects for either land or water that expand travel choice, strengthen public health and the local economy, improve safety and quality of life, and or protect the environment. And who is eligible to apply? The majority of applicants are local municipal governments. However, there may be entities eligible to receive TA set-aside funds as amended in the bipartisan infrastructure law, which include a regional transportation authority, a transit agency responsible for public transportation, such as determined by the Federal Transit Administration, A natural resource or public land agency, including any federal, tribal, state, or local agency responsible for natural resources or public land administration, such as state or local park or forest agencies. A tribal government, a metropolitan planning organization that serves in urbanized areas with a population of 200,000 or fewer, and a nonprofit entity. Nonprofit organizations are not eligible as direct grant subrecipients for TA set-aside funds for this solicitation. However, they are eligible to partner with any eligible entity on a project if state or local requirements permit. The DOT has the final authority to make a determination of the eligibility of an applicant. In addition, many municipalities co-sponsor and or partner with their county or regional nonprofit to complete applications and work together on project or authorization and implementation. Partnerships can help improve a municipality's capacity to manage federal grants. So please keep that in mind. There's this partnership thing can be a key piece if you have concerns about capacity. So what is an eligible project? The facilities must be surface transportation or oriented for both land or water, or either land or water. In other words, not solely for recreational purposes. For example, off-road trails are eligible for funding, but first and foremost should be a transportation facility that is multi-used and connects destinations. Transportation by water encompasses features such as canals, docks, and piers connected to ferry operations. What distinguishes TA set-aside activities from other worthwhile quality of life and environmental activities is their potential to create a transportation experience beyond normal expectations. At the same time, they may protect the environment and provide a more aesthetic, pleasant, and improved interface between the transportation system for the communities and people adjacent to the transportation facilities. Proposals must be for a complete, identifiable, and usable facility or activity. Funds are not available for partial projects that cannot function as a complete and useful activity on their own. And projects must meet the criteria for at least one out of the 7 categories, which are as follows. So eligible projects must fall into one or more of these following categories. So first, design and construction of on-road and off-road trail facilities for pedestrians, bicyclists, and other non-motorized forms of transportation. 2, conversion and use of abandoned railroad corridors for trails for pedestrians, bicyclists, and other non-motorized transportation users. 3, construction of scenic turnouts, overlooks, and viewing areas. 4, historic preservation and rehabilitation of historic transportation facilities, both land and water, such as building structures and canals. 5, community improvement activities, specifically streetscaping and corridor landscaping. 6, environmental mitigation to address stormwater management control and water pollution prevention or abatement related to highway construction or due to highway runoff. And 7, reduced vehicle-caused wildlife mortality or to restore and maintain connectivity among terrestrial or aquatic habitats. So I know those are a lot of pieces to this grant. So let's take each category one by one with a few examples. Okay, so first, the design and construction of on-road and off-road trail facilities for pedestrians, bicyclists, and other non-motorized forms of transportation. Eligible activities include new or reconstructed sidewalks, walkways, or curb ramps, bicycle lane striping, wide paved shoulders, bicycle parking and bus racks, new or reconstructed off-road trails, and bicycle and pedestrian bridges and underpasses. Okay, so that's one. Second, conversion and use of abandoned railroad corridors for trails for pedestrians, bicyclists, and other non-motorized transportation users. Eligible activities include designing and constructing multi-use trails along a railroad right-of-way, major reconstruction of multi-use trails along a railroad right-of-way, developing rail with trail projects, and bicycle parking and bus racks, and purchasing unused railroad property for reuse. Third, construction of scenic turnouts, overlooks, and viewing areas. Eligible projects in this category include improvements to protect and enhance existing state or federally designated scenic or historic highways. For more information about designated scenic byways in New Jersey, visit NJDOT's Historic Roadways website. Okay. Fourth, historic preservation and rehabilitation of historic transportation facilities, both land and water, such as buildings, structures, and canals. Rehabilitation of historic transportation facilities activities include restoration and reuse of historic buildings with strong links to the transportation history, access improvements to historic sites and buildings, restoration of railroad depots, bus stations, and lighthouses, rehabilitation of rail trestles, tunnels, bridges, and canals, and interpretive displays at historic sites. Okay, next, community improvement activities, including streetscaping and corridor landscaping, which the eligible activities under this include lighting, historic sidewalk paving, benches, planting containers, decorative walls, and walkways. Applications under this category should also include elements of safety and provide ADA or American with Disability Act upgrades for pedestrians and wheelchair users. Okay, next is environmental mitigation to address stormwater management control, water pollution prevention or abatement related to highway construction due to highway runoff, vegetation management, and invasive species prevention. So environmental mitigation projects to address stormwater management should include landscaping that helps with stormwater management. Green infrastructure is also included as long as it has a transportation facility connection. So eligible activities here include detention and sediment basins, stream channel stabilization, vegetation management, invasive species prevention, and stormwater drain stenciling and river cleanups. Finally, the seventh category is reduce vehicle-caused wildlife mortality, or to restore and maintain connectivity among terrestrial or aquatic habitats. These activities include wetland acquisition and restoration, stream channel stabilization, wildlife underpasses or overpasses, which may include bridge extensions to provide or improve wildlife passages, wildlife habitat connectivity, and monitoring data collection on habitat fragmentation and vehicle-caused wildlife mortality. So those are the 7 categories. Please keep adding any questions you have in chat and we'll go over them shortly. Okay, so let's talk about eligible costs. Projects eligible for funding include design, right-of-way acquisition, and construction. Applicants are encouraged to utilize local funds to pay for pre-construction activities such as preliminary design and final design, right-of-way, and environmental documentation. However, a design assistance program is available, which will be explained more later in this presentation. It's important to note that costs for construction inspection services should be identified separately if funds are desired for cost inspection. Projects not eligible for funding include administrative costs, miscellaneous contingencies, utility facility relocation costs, and uniform traffic directors unless it's required by design. If any of you are familiar with previous, next slide, please. If any of you are familiar with previous transportation alternatives or transportation enhancement grants, there are a few activities that used to be eligible for funding which continue to be ineligible activities. These include providing pedestrian and bicycle education programs, acquisition of scenic or historic easements for sites, and providing scenic or historic highway programs and funding for welcome centers and transportation museums, these are no longer included in this grant application. Recreational trails are also not included in TA set aside. Those are submitted through the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, and more information on that can be provided, is available through New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection's website. Okay, so let's talk about project selection. Each application will be reviewed on site by NJDOT staff and the TA set aside selection committee. Applications will be evaluated using established program criteria using a 25-point rating system. Each project will be assessed based solely on the content of the application and attachments. There are several ways the rating system gives extra points to applicants. You can receive an extra point if the project is located in one or more of the following designated areas: complete streets, transit villages, or listed by the Department of Community Affairs as a targeted urban municipality, which is a TUMS, or opportunity zone. Construction-ready projects will be given higher consideration, and location of the project is very important. All grant applications will be reviewed for deliberate and actionable consideration of equity in underserved communities. Consideration will be given to applications that provide additional benefits to a community or communities identified in the following categories: Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, environmental justice communities, limited English proficiency populations, and individuals with disabilities. Census data will be used to determine if a project meets this equity criteria, and the following data sets will be used: percent low income, percent minority, less than a high school education, linguistic isolation, individuals under age 5 and individuals under age 18, individuals over age 64, and individuals with disabilities. As an applicant, you will not be required to show or map census data. You just need to know that DOT will be looking at these factors and equity considerations as part of the review of each proposal. If you have multiple projects that you're considering to apply for, choose the project located in the section of your town that has the greatest need. Okay, you may have noticed I went through the part about the designated transit villages, targeted urban municipalities, and opportunity zones pretty quickly. So I want to give you a little resource about how to find out if you qualify for any of those. So if you go to the Department of Community Affairs website, which is listed here below on the community asset map, you will notice there's several layers you can click on. So as part of this mapping tool, you can see points of interest like transit villages, libraries and schools, and more. But it also includes the designated areas for the targeted urban municipalities that we included in knowing if you are a targeted urban municipality will help you get extra points on your application in that 25-point rating scale. If you go to the DCA community asset map and start clicking around on the links that pop up, you will be able to find all of those designations. Okay, so moving on. So TA set aside funds are to only be used for projects with a direct transportation relationship that improves quality of life while reaching the greatest number of people. There are several overarching selection criteria to transportation alternative grants. Applications identify and show support at least one of the selection criteria. Questions you should answer in your application include: can you explain how the project affects users' choice in mode of transportation? Can you predict usage? Does this project increase active transportation opportunities? Does it connect or bridge the gap with other bicycle and or pedestrian facilities? Will safety be improved? Does the project provide regional or community health benefits? And can you explain how it benefits quality of life, public health, and the environment? Also, is this project part of a larger state, regional, or municipal transportation, land use, or economic development plan? If so, make sure you identify and upload documentation and include the project's connection to the bigger picture. Does this project connect community or regional activity centers and provide economic and tourism benefits? How does the project enhance, preserve, or protect historical resources? Is it urgent because this resource could be lost? In short, this is a very competitive grant. You will need to provide compelling reasons based on the selection criteria why your project should be funded. At this point, I will turn the presentation over to my colleague, John Dugan, who will walk you through the grant application. And again, please keep adding your questions to chat. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm John Dugan with NJ Safe Routes Resource Center at Rutgers University. Next, I'm going to walk you through the online application. We will take a break for questions and answers after my walkthrough of the application. And as I'm talking, please continue to put your questions in chat so we can make sure that they're answered. To apply for the TA Set-Aside Grant, applicants will need to utilize SAGE, or the System for Administering Grants Electronically. Each municipality has access to SAGE. Most likely the administrator of the municipality has the username and password, so check with that person first. Municipalities and counties already have an authorized official registered with access to SAGE from the NJ Department of Community Affairs. If you are a school or school district and don't have access to SAGE, contact NJDOT or local aid to request access. If you do not have access to SAGE and you are not representing a municipality, you can apply as a new user online through the NJDOT website. Now I'm going to walk you through the application screens on SAGE. Once you log into SAGE, you will see the 6 program requirements for the TA Set-Aside Grant. These 6 requirements are resolution or letter of support, maintenance commitment, responsible charge, project must relate to surface transportation, the project must meet one of the 7 eligible activities, and the mandatory one-on-one grant application meetings. Going back to what Julie said, if there was one thing she wants you to take out of it, it is this one, mandatory one-on-one grant application meetings. I'm going to talk about each of these 6 requirements in detail, and if any of these 6 requirements are not met, unfortunately, the project and application will be considered ineligible. The first program requirement for TA Set-Aside is a resolution or letter of support. The resolution must be signed and passed within 1 year prior to the solicitation date, which for this grant is May 24th, 2022. The resolution must refer to the project you are applying for and include either resolution or letter of support from the owner of the public right-of-way that impacts the project. So if the project is on a county road, you'll need to obtain a letter of support from the county. If the project is on a state road, you can contact the Bureau of Safety, Bicycle and Pedestrian Programs at NJDOT at bikeped@dot.nj.gov. Sample resolutions and letters of support can be found on saferoutesnj.org/funding, and I will also show an example in the next couple of slides. The next requirement needed to apply for a TA Set-Aside Grant is a maintenance commitment which certifies continual ownership and maintenance of the project. If the applicant does not have jurisdiction over the right-of-way, then a signed letter or resolution must be provided from that party. So if one of the roads within your project is a county road, then you will need to submit a letter of resolution certifying continual ownership and maintenance of the project. As is the case with support letters and resolutions, they must be dated and signed within 1 year of the solicitation date of May 24th, 2022. If it's a letter, it must be addressed to the applicant, not to NJDOT. You can also combine both the support and maintenance commitment into one resolution or letter, which is strongly encouraged to save time. Here is a sample of a letter which includes both support of the project and maintenance commitment to the project. This sample is embedded within SAGE application for ease of use and is also available once again on our website at saferoutesnj.org/funding. The third requirement for applicants is to the TA Set-Aside program is responsible charge. This person must be a full-time employee who will be in charge of the project. The responsible charge cannot be a consultant, even if they provide engineering services or functioning as a local agency engineer of record. The responsible charge is accountable for the project from beginning to end and is expected to maintain familiarity of day-to-day project operations, including project safety issues, direct project staff, or consultants to carry out project administration and make decisions about changed conditions or scope that require change orders or supplemental agreements. The full list of duties and functions of the person of responsible charge can be found in the 2023 TA Set-Aside Handbook. The fourth program requirement is that the project must be related to surface transportation, which includes both land and water. So that can include docks, canals, piers, and ferries. The fifth requirement is that the project must be one of the 7 eligible activities that Leanne mentioned earlier in her presentation. You will only be able to select one of the 7 activities. If any of the following 5 requirements are not included, projects will be considered ineligible. If you choose option number 1, design and construction of on-road and off-road trails facilities for pedestrians, bicyclists, and other non-motorized transportation users, you will be asked, what group is the facility meant to serve, pedestrians and bicyclists? And what is the length of the proposed facility? Indicate the number of miles and be clear about the project limits. As I indicated earlier, you must pick one of the 7 activities. However, if your project meets other activities, choose the one that most accurately fits your project and then include in your narrative portion of the application, which I will show you in a few slides. So for example, if your project is Green Streets, which addresses both 5 and 6, choose one that fits the goal of the project best. If controlling flooding is the goal, then choose 6, but include in the narrative that it will also improve streetscaping with the installation of trees and plantings. If the project is an off-road trail for bicycles and pedestrians, check that box. But if it will also address stormwater management and reduce vehicle-caused wildlife mortality, include that in the narrative to show breadth of the project. Oh, here we go. The last requirement is the one-on-one grant application meetings. To apply for TA set-aside funds, applicants must attend a one-on-one pre-application meeting with NJDOT Local Aid. You'll indicate in the application whether or not you have scheduled and attended a one-on-one application meeting and provide the date of the meeting. More details will be given later in the presentation about these mandatory pre-application meetings and how to schedule them, so stay tuned. The next section of the application is to indicate the type of improvement. Again, picking the infrastructure and engineering project that best represents your project. Bikeways include new bikeways on and off road. Pedestrian safety includes new sidewalks, ADA curb ramps, and traffic calming or quality of life, which includes beautification, environmental mitigation, economic development, or historic preservation. Then you'll need to state the title of the project up to 100 characters and choose the county and municipality of the project. The next section of the SAGE application includes providing contact information for the applicant: name, address, zip code, phone, email address, and federal tax ID. Ideally, this contact should be a responsible charge, but sometimes the mayor is the contact or the person from the applicant organization who is championing the project. The next section is the project proposal, where you provide a detailed description or narrative of the project, up to 4,500 characters, which includes spaces. This is where you would include if your project meets more than one of the 7 eligible categories mentioned before. Here is also where you will attach maps, plans, and images of the project. You can use the MapMaker tool to create a map of your project. More information on this tool will be provided later in this presentation. Please be sure to include pictures of the location and the concerns, as this will give the selection committee a feel for the project. You'll also indicate the project location and the project limits, such as mileposts or corresponding street names, and if the project will affect user modes of transportation. If yes, explain how it connects to community or regional activity centers such as businesses, schools, employment, shopping, recreation, etc. Improves safety and utilize existing infrastructure to promote the use of non-automotive modes through new facilities or the improvement of existing ones. And you have up to 1,000 characters to explain all that. Continuing on to the project proposal section of the SAGE, you have 1,000 characters to explain how the project supports community or regional benefits and visibility or impact on surrounding locations. Does the project demonstrate the benefit to quality of life, community, environment? Does the project demonstrate the extent to which a project links other transportation modes and increases access to community centers, schools, employment sites, recreation, and shopping? And is it visibility or impact on surrounding locations? You have 1,000 characters to explain if the project addresses safety and public health concerns. Does this project provide safety and public health benefits? Does the project address a safety need? Does this project increase active transportation activities? And does this project provide other health benefits? You also have 1,000 characters to describe if the project is part of a state, regional, or municipal land use, transportation, bike ped, or economic development plan. If so, have those relevant pages been attached to the plan? You also have 1,000 characters to explain if the project is located in a community that has a complete streets policy, is designated as a transit village, targeted urban municipality, or opportunity zone. You also have 1,000 characters to explain if the project provides value as an environmental mitigation or enhancement. For example, does it enhance an environmentally sensitive parcel, involve vegetation management, address wildlife management issues, provide stormwater mitigation, or preserve a historic property listed on the National or NJ Registry of Historic Places? Explain if the project will be taking any right-of-way or easements from environmentally sensitive parcels, which you also have 1,000 characters to explain that, such as from wetlands, parks, historic properties, and contaminated sites, etc. Explain if the project requires permits and approvals such as National Environmental Policy Act compliance, NJDEP, or other regulatory agencies, including Pinelands, Meadowlands, and Highlands. No matching funds are required, but if there are other funds contributing to the project that shows commitment and potentials to succeed. The next section of the SAGE application is the project schedule. Please attach a schedule that shows important milestones, including easement acquisitions, right-of-way permits, utility locations, bid, start, construction, and timelines. Remember to consider NEPA documentation and approvals if this is included in your project, and consider the time and effort required to obtain environmental permitting and allow for these in your project timeline. Indicate the number of months from written authorization to project completion and evaluation. Indicate who will maintain the facility. Does the project require utility relocation? Yes or no? If yes, please explain. Are permits required? If yes, please explain. Is the purchase of right-of-way required for construction? If yes, you have 500 characters to explain. Does the project intersect a state highway? Yes or no? If yes, indicate which highway. If yes, is the intersection signalized? Yes or no? Is there a railroad crossing or highway ramp within the project limits? Once again, if yes, you have 500 characters to answer. Will the construction impact traffic at a railroad crossing outside the project limits? Yes or no question. The next section of the application is the cost estimate. Identify the phase of work for the project and check all that apply. Design, right-of-way, and/or construction. If construction, attach a detailed cost estimate including materials cost, tasks needed to complete project, and include full-time construction inspection costs. Full-time construction inspection is required. Construction inspection is an eligible cost. If design, provide design engineering costs. If right-of-way, provide costs to obtain that. Indicate the total project cost and indicate the total amount requested. Applicants are encouraged to use their own funds to pay for soft costs, or perhaps there are other sources of funding for the project. It is recommended that projects have a requested funding amount between $150,000 and $1 million. Exceptions may be made at the discretion of the selection committee. Consulting engineers providing design services are not eligible to provide construction inspection services for the same project. Utility facility relocation costs are not eligible for reimbursement. All projects must meet the requirement of the American with Disabilities Act. For projects that involve funding for design, the sponsor project must comply with the federal requirements for the procurement of professional services if consultants are being used. Not included are administration costs, contingencies, utility relocation, uniform traffic directors unless required by design. An effort should be made to develop estimates as accurately and comprehensively as is practical. To assist with the preparation of the cost estimate, a typical design treatment cost guidance document has been developed and may be found on the NJDOT Local Aid Resource Center website under training. The partnership and public outreach section will allow you to attach up to 5 letters of support from community organizations, residents, groups, committees, and other interested parties. Be sure to ask your partners to address their letters of support of your project to the applicant, not the NJDOT. Letters must also be signed and dated within 1 year of the solicitation date. At this point, we would like to stop and address chat questions or other comments that we would like to make sure are heard.
Thank you, John. So I know that's within 1 year of the solicitation date, that gets to be confusing, understood. And Julie, if you don't mind me jumping in, I mean, I
Sure.
know if you applied for the grant and you had letters of support in 2020, the idea is those letters of support, you would need to get ones for this.
Actually, I think let's go to the top. Shall we go to the top
Yeah.
here?
Go ahead, Julie.
So yeah, we're gonna get started. For one of the questions was to start off the top here, and the first individual asking questions sent it to the panelists. Okay, it said, how about refurbishment of existing bike lanes, restriping of lanes, pavement repair, etc. So this is not meant to be a maintenance type program. It's really meant to be upgrades, safety improvements, or other things that are that focus on non-motorized forms of transportation. The other goal is we really want to see applications that are have a link to transportation base. They link back. So for instance, if it's a historic, let's say it's a canal or something like that, they want to improve like access points on and off to a canal, then they need to, the application needs to speak about how it was utilized as a form of transportation. What's the link to transportation? What's the historical link? The application needs to demonstrate those links to another type of transportation.
So Julie,
Yeah.
can I ask a what if
Yes.
question then?
Yes.
So, it's not a maintenance grant. So if you're just simply restriping what was already there, then that's not really applicable.
That's really
But if they
basically,
are making an improvement and doing protected bike lanes, so they're upgrading to make them, because we know protected bike lanes are
right,
safer.
yeah, right. And of course, that wasn't what was asked, so that's why I'm
Right.
not addressing
So
it.
I'm just
Yeah,
trying to,
right, understood.
to
The
make some
other thing,
clarification.
right, the other thing I would actually speak to folks that are thinking about considering applying today, just understand, and we might get into this a little bit later, understand under the new bill, we are trying to embrace some things in those under the new bill. The one being that pedestrian bicyclists, there's a tremendous focus on that throughout the country due to a lot of pedestrian and bicyclist fatalities within the last 2 years, and certainly within the start of the pandemic. So there's added focus on that. We'll get more into that. Do pay attention to the a safe system approach that the federal highway pushes, and do pay attention to the safety countermeasures that are out there that federal highway puts out. We'll get into that a little bit more. And then thirdly, I do want to also mention there's guidance that our DOT on our safety side, our bike ped programs and safety group has put out. We have a safety plan that's been approved from the department. Take a look at the bike ped safety approach areas and those particular emphasis areas. And then also last, we in the back of our handbook have provided a lot of updated links. If you're actually considering a bicycle pedestrian application or something focused on that type of improvement, there's a lot more links, the feds have put out based on their complete streets guidance that is in the back of our, handbook. I totally recommend you go and look at that. That's very important. We included that to actually try to, emphasize improvements, for bike ped safety. So,
A
the
little bit
next,
more into that.
Yep,
You want to go into
yep.
the next question, the would solar power
solar
be-
power, yes, so they're actually eligible because again, that like an RRFB, is actually, meant to be a pedestrian improvement or crossing the street, whatnot. So, yep, so then the populations above 200,000 people are not eligible. Yes, they are eligible. I guess the concern was, so is Jersey City and Newark, can they apply? Yes.
Yeah.
So again,
The one thing that you may have missed, and we don't really have any MPOs that have fewer than 200,000. All three of our MPOs have more than 200,000. It doesn't really apply, but it was something that was very specific in the federal infrastructure bill. to say-
fortunately, we're a very populated state, so.
Yes.
And
So that really doesn't apply to New Jersey. It was just a nuance of the bill.
the other thing is,
And that only applies to metropolitan planning organizations, not to municipalities.
incorrect, and just getting away from the MPOs and getting caught up in all that gobbledygook, shall I say. The one thing I want to say is that the DOT has worked very, very hard in partnership, to work on a partnership with our 3 MPOs so that we all run a collective application. We all work together, and there is behind the scenes ability for the department to work out, to pay for funds for folks that would be really under 200,000. So don't worry about that. That's more of an internal thing to worry about. That we try to work that out with our MPO partners as we select our projects and stuff. So focus on applying. That's really what I give folks out there. Focus on getting your application. Focus on trying to do your best and trying to meet all of the things we're talking about today. That's really what the message should be. And again, our one-on-ones, we have representatives from the 3 MPOs, depending upon which, area your area falls. They are attending these one-on-one meetings. So please take advantage if I can say that one more time. Okay. So then again, we talked about, does a letter need to be a year in advance? So we just want to make sure the bottom line that the letter is relevant and that it's not 10 years ago. Why do we ask for that? So we want to make sure that administration that is applied is actually the current administration. It's like, so we might have a resolution or letter or something like that. It could have been 10 years ago, but you know what? That was probably an old administration. So we're not sure if this actually speaks to the current administration's opinions. And that's really what we're asking for. So it has to be basically May 24th, 2021 through the closing of the application process, which would be November 3rd, 2022. So, okay, so that's really where we want to be. Now, yeah, then we talked about the metropolitan planning. Yep. And folks, let's see what else can.
Can an entity make more than one?
Right, I understand. I was going to
Yeah.
just address that. I looking through that. Thank you. So can an entity make more than one application for different projects? Yes, they can, but the other thing is if you're a nonprofit or something like that and you want to make one, you need to partner with the with the municipality. So we're going to look at it from the municipality. So be a separate municipality that you would be partnering with, yes. So in those terms, the nonprofit is encouraged to work with that particular municipality to apply.
So wait, Julie, can you just back up?
Yes,
So one application per applicant,
yes,
but if you are a nonprofit and you want to work with multiple municipalities, you can do so.
correct. The other thing is, this is typically speaks to more of a regional type of grant, which we're not, may or may not running. But the other thing is, you may, let's say we have a situation where there's actually like let's say it's a trail and it goes through 3 municipalities, and let's say you're a nonprofit. This is kind of a weird example, but I would say that you would want to have one municipality apply on behalf of those other 3 entities. So it'd be a total of 4. So you would list, in that case, somebody was going to apply, some municipality. The other two municipalities are going to need to show the support and the right-of-way letters and whatever else that are required so that folks can work on the right-of-way. In addition, there's maintenance commitments and whatnot that are demonstrated. And then we'll call it thirdly or fourthly, you would want the actual nonprofit to be, listed somewhere in the application. Does that make sense? I hope.
Yeah, so in other words, if you have a
Yeah.
regional trail, which a lot of trails are regional, and there's 4 municipalities that want to work on making upgrades, and usually that often happens with the help of a nonprofit, then that nonprofit can't be the primary applicant, but they should be listed on the application as a entity helping with the grant, whether it's the grant application or implementation. And the difficult part is, and it's understandably difficult, one of the municipalities has to be the lead in the application.
The other scenario would be that it's going to go into the whole conversation where you want to make sure you have logical termini in a project. So the other situation may be that you have 2 or 3 municipalities and you may want to break it up. Let's say it is a kind of a regional trail. You would then, another way to approach it would be to reach out to each municipality, A, B, and C, and say, hey, A, let's apply for this grant. If that's what the municipality wants to do, you'll have to reach out to municipality B and ask them to apply for the grant, and then municipality C to apply for the grant, so that they have 3 separate applications. And that's, of course, if the actual municipality wants to, make this the particular application that they want to apply for. I hope that helps a little bit.
Yeah, and I can't stress enough that Julie has the mandatory one-on-one meetings. All 4 entities would need to be there if they were doing a combined grant, correct, Julie?
Yes.
Right. So if you're, I know this makes it difficult. Meeting logistics and arrangements are always, tough. But when you go onto the Local Aid Resource Center website and sign up for your mandatory one-on-one meeting, the lead applicant should set up the meeting and make sure all the partners are part of that meeting. Right, Julie? Yeah.
Yes, correct.
I know. Go ahead, John.
I was just going to say the other part of that would be that would require multiple resolutions of support and maintenance commitments, because as you go for each municipality, that right of way in there or so on. So just keeping that in mind as well.
Yep. And I think I agree, John. That's the important clarification there, is that you want to make sure just because you're the applying, they team up and they have one particular municipality apply, that everybody else is in support of them. You'll have to wind up getting, it's complicated, but we could work through that. So there's 2 scenarios for you to handle that. Let's see, can the project have more than one location, such as umbrella at multiple locations for similar types of enhancements or improvements? Sure. If you have it's kind of like the Safe Routes to School. If there's a particular thing you want to do and it's within your municipality, but you want to clearly lay out what you're doing. Clearly lay out the mapping. We provide ample support and ample places to upload various documents. So you might want to upload supporting documents, photographs, figures, whatnot, that would support your application. So I would again talk about that a little more at the 101, but look into, that's fine. How about installation and missing section of sidewalk?
Julie, can I just make one more comment on that? Just on that, if there are multiple locations, if there's a way that you can package up locations and having it divided up, maybe like a phase 1, 2, and 3, where you can do 3 locations, great. If there's more money, we can do 6 locations, or if there's even more, we can do 9. But at a minimum, we can do these 3 or these 3. So then maybe we can not necessarily select all 9. If you show that in your cost,
so I think
where it's broken up that way.
And it's a slightly different approach. Here's another thing that I want to kind of piggyback off what John said. So this is kind of a question we get more like for Safe Routes to School project, because typically they're more located, around 5 school districts, let's say, and so each improvement's kind of located, it's segmented based on where the school is located. Yes, but then they really should total up to about $1.5 million. I don't want folks to sit there and say, oh, gee, let's throw in every little, soup and nut that we have, and it totals $10 million of improvements. And hey, let's let DOT decide. That's not how you want to approach it. Do sit there and consider how much your potential improvements are going to cost, and please do try to dial into something that's going to be about the grant amount, because our limits, which we have gotten into, I believe, with a 350,000 to 1.5 million. So please don't put, the kitchen sink in and throw $10 million improvements in, because that's not what it's meant to be. So, so do spend some time and, prioritize, like John said. There's other opportunities. We will still continue to run our Safe Route to School program. It's just that we're not running at the same time concurrently. So,
Julie, we had missed an
Yes.
earlier question. The question was, would river dredging be an eligible request?
So, you'll have to tie that one back to the transportation. How is that going to fit for transportation history? And how is it going to fit for transportation? And I definitely recommend you schedule a one-on-one, and let's talk about that a little bit more, because I need to look at that, or I need to look at what the actual proposed improvement would be, what's it for, and whatnot. So that's where I recommend you go look for that. Can a project have more than one location? We've talked about that. How about installation of missing section of sidewalk that would fully connect the village residential district to a transportation center? So bus is a motorized form of transportation. Is there another place that missing piece of sidewalk or whatever that's trail that would provide you opportunity to go somewhere else besides that? Is there other locations that would benefit? With streetscaping in a historically registered village likely to be eligible. So streetscaping, I just want to address streetscaping. As a reminder, streetscaping is an eligible improvement, but we want to see that the streetscaping applications also talk about safety upgrades. They should include safety upgrades as part of an application, such as lighting. They need to demonstrate that they're going to help improve the safety of bicycle pedestrians. And also we want to make sure that we're having upgrades to ADA improvements and whatnot. So they can't be just typical, I'm going to put benches in and a couple of trees, and that's it. It needs to have a safety link or a bike ped link or some other kind of a link that we would link in addition to it. Or we have some of the other 6 categories. So I think in terms of trying to link into those categories, that's what we're looking for. Let's see, unimportant, can a participant count in a meeting for record keeping? Normally I can see it, but it can't for this meeting if that's private.
Currently, we have 45% participants on this meeting.
Yeah, okay. Yep, okay. Yeah, and I encourage you to actually try to continue to have any staff. You can register for all 3 of these webinars. We're not going to restrict you at all, so you can come back again if you're unsure. You're more than welcome to attend all 3. And again, this will be posted for your your reference. Say, what would you expect county partnership of multiple municipalities are involved? Again, same situation. If the county wants to apply, that's fine. We've had situations where we've had a municipality apply, but they've had to work through their county because they're such a small entity and they really can't necessarily carry the grant forward. So we've worked with them to develop a shared services agreement with the county, so that the county would actually administer the grant on their behalf, but that's post-scene. So again, the actual applicant was provided the grant. So that's the situation in some of the smaller municipalities within our southern communities. Okay, and that would actually go up for the northern areas as well that have smaller populations and whatnot. Okay, let's see. What will be discussed at the one-on-one mandatory meeting? So what will be discussed? So basically we have a I don't want to call it agenda, but it's actually like we give folks a piece of paper or and actually a little pre-quiz or pre-application I want to call it agenda. It's a series of questions that are going to mirror what we're going to look at as part of the review process. So it's meant to be like a tickler, so to speak. So review that, think about what your application may entail, review those questions. Do come with anything you have. If you have a blank map, great. If you're actually a concerned citizen or a resident out there, and you want to ask questions, and you want to apply, and you want to work out for your nonprofit or something like that, come with questions, come with a map, come with any photographs, come with right of way, come with things that you have. If you've applied before, this is not meant to be a session and how do I improve this particular application. We're not going to go over that. That's you have opportunities, reach out to DOT, myself, and our director, Lane Rankin. We can schedule a debriefing to go over that specific application. Come with your previous application. We can talk about maybe reviewing the application. Are there other things you want to add to the application? Maybe it wasn't quite fleshed out enough. Things like that. That's what we're going to ask you to come with. If you have a
Julie,
plan, yes, sure.
Can I chime in real
Yes.
quick? Also,
Yep.
To make the most out of these pre-applications and not making them just something mandatory that you check off a box, that come with a project that you have in mind that you want to move forward with, that we, local aid, the MPOs can help kind of mold that into a good quality application. I would say don't just come with, hey, we're thinking about doing this, we're not sure, because then you don't maximize the benefit of these mandatory meetings. So really come with, and as Julie said, if you have a map, any conceptual plans that you have, anything that can help us understand the project you're trying to get, it'll only make your application better moving forward. So come using that pre-screening form that Julie's talking about, but coming to the meeting kind of with a thought of the project, and then we can help kind of shape that a little bit and let you know if this project is really ready to move forward, or maybe you should think about taking a step back, doing some other things, and apply for the next round. So it's really to benefit you to make your decisions, whatever they are, the best possible.
I'm also gonna, to answer that question a little bit further, stepping back to we're gonna get into this in the next segment, but it's so important. We spend a lot of time continually trying to update our TA set aside handbook. We spend time actually putting the application screenshots are true to what the application is going to look like when you go into Sage. Please, I can't stress enough, not only with the one-on-one mandatory meeting, please go in there and look at those two things. They're there for the applicants. They're meant, we spend time on that. Please do look at that. The other thing is, if you're really lost and you're like, what is a good project? Federal Highway has, if you go in FHWA TA set aside, they have all this guidance, and they talk about different categories, and they show categories, projects and things like that have been funded over the previous years. Don't sit there and say this is exactly, it might be older. I know the federal person down in Washington says it's not quite perfect, but it gives you some examples of good applications as well that were funded not only in this state, but in other states. So if you're really lost and you want to kind of just look at pictures, that's a great place to go. And I have to say that's an additional resource for you. I hope that helps with that. Let's see, it seems there has to be some costs absorbed by the municipalities. Can that be funded by another grant or private effort? Or does that cost have to be absorbed by the municipal budget? it's going to depend on whether or not the costs associated with certain things are eligible. So we do not pay for contingencies. We do not pay for staffing, no staffing, doing, you know, things in the behind the scenes of the actual administration of the grant. We actually, you know, will pay for the well, we have an opportunity similar to our Safer to School. We will run design assistance, so we will be able to provide support, which is about a 3 or 4 month lag, so to speak, because we need to announce the grant recipients first, and then we need to actually put the grant recipients list out, and then we can actually apply. We have to follow the Brooks Act, which is a federal requirements quality-based selection process to actually go through and you know, get our design assistance program, but we actually offer that to everybody that applies and gets a grant so that we can help them. It's federally funded money, but it's provided for your reimbursement. It's above and beyond the grant amount. But that's another good question. Please do ask when you go to your 101 about that and get into that a little bit further.
And I'll be covering that in a moment. So why don't we kind of finish up the presentation, and we do have a second stop for Q&A. So thank you for all your questions. This has been an excellent dialogue. I really love it when people have good, healthy questions, and you've given some really good ones to think about. So thank you for that. So let me just continue on. The next part is really talking about the grant application process from a bigger picture down to tips and strategies. So please continue to pay attention. We're in the home stretch now. I know it's been a long webinar, but we do try and go through like every little bit because we know how these grant applications do take a long time. There's a lot of pieces to them, so it takes a little bit for us to go through all the sections. So let me just looking at the bigger picture. There are 5 stages to federal grant life cycle. So what we're looking at right now is this, we're called stage 1 or the pre-award stage, where DOT is soliciting grant applications. But the reason I'm going through just letting you know the full grant life cycle is that it is a lengthy process to implement these grants. So, you know, don't be surprised if this grant takes many, many years to implement. So let me just talk to you about the other stages. So following this stage are the award notification stage. That will take some time to get to. The Department of Transportation and the MPOs have a selection process. They do go out and field check every application. So this does take a little while to get to the award stage, so be prepared. Those who are awarded the contracts then set up a kickoff meeting with the Department of Transportation. And it's in that kickoff meeting, if you are selected for the award, where you will work on the next stage, which is authorization. So when you get from the award to letting know you are authorized, you will know you are authorized when you receive written authorization to proceed, and only in the authorization stage are you eligible to spend grant money. It's a really important piece of this. Then there's the implementation stage, which is all the part we're all most excited about, is where you actually perform the grant requirements. You'll be required to submit reports, and that's when you can request and receive payments. And finally, the last thing, last but not least, there is a closeout stage, which finalizes the contract after all the aspects of the project are complete. So the thing to be aware of all 5 stages, it will take several years. You must receive the authorization in order to spend money, and in doing the authorization, that's when you'll have to demonstrate you have the necessary permits, approvals, and environmental clearances that must be obtained within this time period. So as you can imagine, when you're saying these words like environmental permits and approvals, these things do take time. Plan accordingly. Some things to keep in mind as you consider applying for these grants. First, completing the authorization process is necessary. Any money spent prior to receiving that official go-ahead will not be reimbursed. Second, funds are provided on a reimbursement basis. This means you will need to spend money upfront and present invoices for the money spent before you are reimbursed. So be sure to budget accordingly. Finally, all applicable federal laws and regulations must be followed. Make sure you have the capacity to manage these federal funds. This is why we're talking about partnerships. Partnerships might be the way to get the capacity to manage federal funds. And I want to point something out that we are very lucky in New Jersey to have, because by the federal law, this grant requires a 20% match. However, in New Jersey, the Department of Transportation covers that 20% match with state funds. There is no additional match that will be required of the applicant. So this is a really big bonus for applying for these grants in New Jersey that many other states do not cover. So just be aware that, you know, there's even more reason to apply because you're not required to cover the 20% match. The other opportunity with this grant is the design assistance program. Julie just mentioned it in talking about in the Q&A. So this will be available for TA set-aside grant recipients. The design assistance program makes available consulting engineering services to assist with the development of plans, specifications, and estimates for projects. So after the grant awards are selected, DOT will establish a pool of engineering design consultants through a selection process. The purpose of this pre-qualified consultant pool is to aid the project delivery process by reducing the time required to procure professional services and ensure the consultant selection process is compliant with federal requirements. Use of this consultant pool is not mandatory, but it is encouraged in order to shorten the design time, reduce cost, and improve quality of the delivery. There are several steps to selecting a consultant and negotiating services as part of this design assistance program process. Just know that if you choose to use design assistance services, DOT will hold a specific meeting to discuss the pool of consultants and the full process with you. So we've mentioned this several times. Doesn't hurt to mention it again. New for this round of TA set-aside grant applications are these mandatory one-on-one pre-application meetings. And I'm happy to say thank you for putting in chat that you had your meeting yesterday and explaining that was very useful. In the last grant round, these were optional, but people found they were getting so much out of it that it's been mandatory for this round. So applicants must attend these meetings. You also must make sure the entity that is applying is at the meeting. This isn't a meeting of consultants. Consultants, if you have a engineering consultant, they're welcome to join the meeting, but they're not the applicant, and so they aren't the ones setting up the meetings. So in conjunction with the 3 MPOs, which are John Kasha's group at DVRPC, or if you're in the SJTPO region, which is South Jersey, or the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority, one of those representatives plus the DOT will be at these pre-application meetings. The prospective applicant can discuss your project concept, get guidance on whether the proposed project is a good fit for the program. The team will be able to help identify any potential risks and discuss essential program requirements. Participation does not guarantee a grant, but it helps the department ensure that the projects submitted for funding are applicable and good projects. So as Julie mentioned, pre-application meetings are held. They started April 11th. They'll be held till September 30th. Do not hesitate to set up your meeting now. Please do that right away. And John, if you go to the next slide. I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the prerequisites to prepare for these one-on-one meetings to the extent possible. So first, create a project map or maps. And if you don't have one already, there is a project map tool that you can use. It's called MapMaker. It's through the Local Aid Resource Center. So use that MapMaker tool to create your project map or maps to go over. Create a brief description of your project and identify who's going to benefit, how it's got larger connections, the things we've already talked about that are, that this type of grant is looking for. What are the environmental mitigation and concerns or benefits? Create, to the extent you can, a cost estimate of your project. Now, we know this is one of the harder things and can be time consuming. So there is a guide that John just mentioned in his part talking about the SAGE application. There's this cost estimate tool. You don't have to be precise for the meeting. This is a perfect time for you to get an idea of what your cost estimates are, present them to the department and the MPOs, and get their input on whether you are spot on, if there's anything missing. So you don't have to be completely prepared. Just do your best to get a general idea. And also there is a pre-application questionnaire. When you're signing up for these application meetings, you'll notice there's a questionnaire you can download. Again, do your best. It's kind of checklist style. Do your best to go through that questionnaire and think through. It'll help you come up with questions for the department. You don't have to have it completely filled out and submit it to the department as part of these pre-application meetings. It's more to keep the conversation focused on your project and make sure you get all your questions answered at the meeting. So I hope that was helpful in figuring out what you want to be prepared for these one-on-one meetings. So let's finish up with some tips and strategies and continue to add your questions to chat. We'll be getting to that Q&A shortly. So first and foremost, make sure you review all the DOT grant application guidance material. And there are a number of resources at the NJDOT Local Aid RC.com website. Pay particular close attention to the TA Set-Aside Handbook. So dog ear it, highlight it, make this handbook your friend. All of what we presented today and more is in this handbook. So just make sure you download the 2023 version of this handbook, which is on that website. Make sure to include all 6 application requirements. So for your resolutions, don't upload a blank resolution that is not signed and dated. I hate to say this, this has happened in the past, and these applications will not be considered if you don't have unsigned resolutions or letters of support will not be accepted. So don't make that common mistake. Work very early. Start today, if you haven't already, to get all the resolutions from all affected parties, towns and councils, school boards, counties, your letters of support, whoever you need to be part of the application. These resolutions of support do take time. For anybody who works in a municipality, you know they take time. Don't hesitate to start them. Don't wait to the last minute to get them passed. There is a sample resolution that is part of the SAGE application. It is also provided on the saferoutesnj.org website. Download that sample resolution. In the sample resolution also includes a maintenance agreement commitment as part of that sample resolution. You want to, it's easier to have them as one document than separate documents. That's how DOT accepts them. So use that sample resolution and get it out to your partners today. And make sure when you're writing these resolutions, don't leave all the information blank. Make sure it refers to the projects for which your funds are being sought and passed within this past year. So don't just use a generic resolution, say this resolution is for this TA set aside 2023 grant application for, and name the project that you're applying for. Make sure letters of support and resolutions that when you have people submitting letters of support, they should be submitted to you as the applicant, not to the Department of Transportation. The other thing is make sure you identify your person of responsible charge early. This is a federal requirement. The responsible charge does not need to be an engineer, but they must be a full-time employee of the local public agency, or otherwise known as the applicant, like the municipality. Consulting engineers providing engineering services or functioning as the local agency engineer of record are not eligible to be your person of responsible charge. It cannot be a consultant, it must be a full-time employee. If you do not have a full-time employee in your municipality or whoever the applicant is, this is in concern, this is the other reason you need to set up that one-on-one meeting with local aid to discuss your options as soon as possible, so that you can get that part handled, because you do need this federally required person of responsible charge. Okay, next slide. Requested project funding should be between $350,000 and $1.5 million. So these aren't small projects. there's a reason you want to have at least $350,000 worth of project to apply for. Federal money isn't necessarily the easiest money to spend, so you want to make sure it's worth your while. We have done interviews with many people who have spent these funds in the past. You don't want to, it does take a number of staff time to keep up with the federal requirements and paperwork. So 350 is the minimum that you want to apply for. And in 1.5 million is a nice hefty project. So you may find if it's a regional transportation facility, you want to partner with folks so that you get you apply for the 1.5 million if you're able to spend that money. John Kasha made a very good point earlier by saying, figure out a way to phase this in digestible chunks you can manage and handle. So you might find, even if you do want 1.5 million or more, find phases in chunks that you can manage. That's a really important thing, because it may sound crazy. $1.5 million is hard to spend in federal dollars. So make sure you have the capacity to manage and spend the funds. And also include all the costs. So there are often hidden costs, well, maybe not hidden costs, but things you should always think of, like in construction inspection, and any additional funding sources you may have to help spend this money. So think it through all the pieces. Some of that's in that one-on-one meeting grant application. So think about those as you're putting your cost estimate together. Okay, here's some more important tips. Sorry. So be thorough in your application. Application ratings are based on the content of your application. Do not assume raters know your project. Don't assume they know where it's located. Don't assume they know the person reading the application gets the bigger picture to how this facility may connect with multiple other types of destinations and projects. Make it obvious how this is a project, how it's going to have local and regional impacts, especially if it's already part of a bigger plan that's already something that's out there and approved and been through a public process. Your application must stand on its own. The Department of Transportation does field check all project locations, so make sure it's very clear where you are proposing your projects on the map. So one of the questions earlier was, if you had a similar safety improvement being implemented over different parts of the town, make sure all of those sections are on your map, so that when the Department of Transportation sends out their folks to field check your application, they know exactly where to go and they're not getting lost in your town. Indicate your construction readiness. Include status of permits. Maybe you are anticipating and there's some permitting discussions you've already had. Indicate that in your application. Indicate any right-of-way issues or utility relocations. Include all costs of the project, including construction inspection. And an effort should be made to develop estimates as accurately, as comprehensively as practical. So again, John mentioned this typical design treatment cost guidance. Use that as your model. But we all know, by the time you submit the application and you actually go to implementation, sometimes there are cost problems. We're in a problem area right now where sometimes we're not even able to get all the pieces of the construction that we want to do right now. It's understood that you're going to have to just do your best you can based on today's cost standards. Okay. Include maps that provide context and connections and attractions. Feel free to use this map maker tool that's linked here to draw your project. In your maps, you should indicate project locations within the larger area, project limits for new construction, and attractions that people like to walk and bike, for food and entertainment, historic landmarks, transit. Be specific about how this project is going to make connections. Lastly, maps don't even necessarily have to be computer generated, but I really suggest you do. You can highlight a paper map and scan it if that's what works for you best. Or you could take a Google map and screenshot it. Just make sure it's thorough and comprehensive, and that as DOT is field checking them, they know where to go to see your proposed locations. Okay, some more application tips and strategies. One of the best things you can do is include good pictures of your proposed project. You can include up to 10 photos. I've seen applications where multiple photos are part of one PDF document that also provides some description with context. In other words, use pictures to tell your project story. And when taking photos of your area, make sure they adequately show the issues. If you have a safety concern, make sure you capture those concerns in your photos. If your concerns is seniors crossing the street on a Saturday morning, take your pictures then. A photo of an empty street that doesn't fully capture the safety issues is not as helpful to reviewers. Also, don't include photos that are too close up and provide no context. Use people, feet, or other ways to provide scale to your pictures. Remember, not all the application reviewers will be part of the fieldwork review. Give them the context they need to properly assess your project. And lastly, a few don'ts for your list. These are mistakes past applicants have made. Don't make these mistakes. Don't submit a completed or partially completed project. This is for upcoming projects. This isn't to reimburse you for a project you already completed. Do not propose a project on a county road without consulting the county. You must have that resolution from the county if you're proposing anything that is on or touches a county road. Don't propose something that goes against current design standards. Projects must comply with ADA, which is American with Disability Act standards. Don't propose a sidewalk without also accompanying safe street crossings. So one of the questions earlier was providing gaps in sidewalks. You know, there are gaps in sidewalks, and that is an important project, especially if it's in a community, an area of equity need. However, you don't want to just think about the sidewalks, you have to think about the street crossings and what can you do to slow traffic to make those street crossings safer. Add that to your application. Don't propose a project in a neighborhood where residents have protested against it. So you'd be surprised. We all have heard about those protests and those people who don't want a project in their neighborhood. Get the public engagement done and get the public support before you apply for it. Because the last thing the department wants to see is that you propose and get awarded money that then the municipality rescinds later because the neighbors or the town didn't want it and they caused a stink and the town returns the money. It has happened. That is such a waste of time, energy, and effort on all levels. Make sure you have the community support. And think about cost. This should be for bigger projects. Don't apply for a federal grant if it's under $350,000. Okay, we're almost done. For the final stretch, I want to give you some important resources and next steps. I'm sure many of you are familiar with DOT's state-funded programs. The Transportation Trust Fund in New Jersey provides $400 million in state aid to municipalities and counties for local transportation improvements. Each year, the New Jersey Department of Transportation issues a solicitation announcement to municipalities inviting them to apply for funding on their specific project needs. Applications receive points based on various criteria, including existing conditions, safety improvements, and access to public services. Other important criteria include the municipality's special designation, whether the municipality has received an allotment within the last 3 years. An extra point is given to towns with a complete streets policy or listed in the Department of Community Affairs targeted in urban municipalities, that TUMS designations I mentioned earlier. So, and the good news, if you're not already aware, the state aid solicitation is open currently and is due July 1st. So this is another option. If you have a project that's under $350,000 or you're not sure it meets the criteria of transportation alternatives, talk to your municipality about applying for municipal aid or one of the other municipal state aid programs. There is, along with the application, there is a commitment to equity with these projects as well. So again, take a look at the guidelines on the Local Aid Resource Center website about the state aid program and applications, and be aware of the scoring for that includes equity as well. And another resource, if you're not already aware, there is the New Jersey Transportation Infrastructure Bank. So this is an independent state financing authority responsible for providing and administering low interest rate loans to pre-qualified municipalities, counties, and regional authorities in New Jersey for the purpose of financing transportation quality infrastructure projects. Currently, to the end of June, the construction loan interest rate is 1.2%. To make an appointment with the infrastructure bank staff, you need to go to their website. It's njib.gov/njtib. So this is another opportunity, but you must apply for it through the Transportation Infrastructure Bank. Again, it's not a SAGE New Jersey DOT grant type program. It's just another opportunity that's out there. There are many resources that can guide municipalities on policy and design that addresses walking and bicycling, including several guides that are very specific to New Jersey. For example, the New Jersey Department of Transportation's Complete Streets Design Guide, the Complete and Green Streets Model Policy and Guide, the School Zone Design Guide, the School Bike Parking Guide. All of these are good design guides that are specific to New Jersey. Plus the Planning for Greenways guidebook for New Jersey communities. These will help you identify safety improvements you can make in your applications. So you may want to take a look at these design guides. There's a few more even through your NPOs that may have more resources. But what you want to do is look for some of the best practice. If you want to make things safer, your town safer for people to walk and bike, you need to look at best practice on ways to slow the motor vehicles down. You need to look at how wide your bike lanes, your trails, your pedestrian infrastructure should be. All of these are listed in these design guidance and more. So the key is all environmental and engineering plans and specifications shall conform to engineering standards and must be prepared by a professional engineer licensed to practice in New Jersey. Okay, another great resource, and this is super important, is the Federal Highway Administration's Proven Safety Countermeasures, which are evidence-based treatments and strategies that practitioners can implement to successfully address crashes to achieve safety goals. Julie made an important comment at the very beginning of this webinar, which is that we've had a higher number of people walking and biking who've died from their injuries from traffic crashes in the past year or two. So it's a priority of the department to address pedestrian and bicycle fatalities and serious injuries. These countermeasures do just that. And we are in New Jersey looking to see places implement more of these. So I highly recommend you go to the FHWA Proven Safety Countermeasures website and click through these different countermeasures and see which one of them you can add to your application and apply to your project. So and there's some new ones. If you've been into this website in the last year, please know that they added new ones within the last year. So it's always good to keep going back to this website and see the new proven safety countermeasures they have added, especially if it's been a few years since you visited this website. Okay, next slide. Finally, other resources and technical assistance you should take advantage of to help with your grant applications. We've mentioned it several times. The New Jersey Local Aid Resource Center, which was established to assist communities with project planning, grant applications, project delivery, guidance through the federal process, and more. This is always a good place to start for all DOT grant information, and they have a help desk. If you look up in the corner of the website, it says Ask an Expert. Please click on that and ask all your grant questions there, and they will be timely in their responses to you. And just so you know, there is also on the Department of Transportation's website is the Local Aid and Economic Development website page. There's also information about this grant there. However, they do, and this is where you're going to access your SAGE to start your application. So the link to the Local Aid Resource Center is provided through this application. There are kind of one and the same. You just want to go through the Local Aid Resource Center website for your grant help desk. DOT's Division of Local Aid and Economic Development is divided into 4 districts, plus staff at New Jersey DOT's headquarters. Your local district representative will manage grants that are selected to receive TA set-aside funding. Please note, if you are in District 2, recently that phone number changed, so if you need to make a call to your District 2 region, please note the new phone number. Because 50% of TA set-aside funding is sub-allocated through the 3 New Jersey Metropolitan Planning Organizations, they can also help your community address regional transportation needs. So check out your local MPO's website for plans and other resources to help you with your application. One of the best resources is free technical assistance. New Jersey has 8 regional transportation management associations that cover all 21 counties in the state. Staff within these associations are available to help with several walking initiatives, including Safe Routes to School programs and assistance on adopting complete and green streets policies. The staff at the New Jersey Safe Routes Resource Center, which is also housed at Rutgers and supported by New Jersey DOT, assist public officials, professionals, and the general public in creating a safer and more accessible walking and bicycling environments in your community. By focusing on improvements to support active travel by youth, we believe we can create conditions that are safer, healthier, and more equitable, and appealing to all. So feel free to reach out to our help desk through our website for questions or assistance with making your community safer and healthier for people walking and bicycling. There are also training and programs offered through the Center for Advanced Infrastructure and Technology and Transportation, or CATE, which is also housed at Rutgers. It's one of our sister organizations at Rutgers. They offer many free webinars that are certified for continuing education credits for several professional organizations. There are several courses about managing federal grants that they offer multiple times a year. These are grant management for federal aid projects, federal aid responsible charge training. You've heard us mention that. Responsible charge is an important part of this project. Crash analysis tool training, and more. So please go to their website and sign up for their free training, especially if you anticipate you have a new person who's going to be listed as your person of responsible charge. And there's also the Federal Highway Administration has a website that you can browse and look for other library of informational videos, resources, and things that address complex regulations and requirements of the federal aid highway programs. And what's nice about this is they do try and make them easy to understand concepts and provide illustrated examples. So this website also continually updates and is another great resource if you have any questions. Okay, we made it through the tips and strategies. So I hope you're still with us, and I saw a lot more questions added to the Q&A, so we'll continue there. Julie, if you want to take away with a few more questions.
Sure. Thank you, everyone, for all these wonderful questions. It's been really very interesting, and gotten a lot of really good questions. I just wanted to, before I delve into that really quickly, a couple other little things that we want to pay attention to. Leanne mentioned the county road along the street, so you're making an improvement. You want to make sure that you reach out to the county if you have a project along the county road. Too often folks assume that since we're going to do a sidewalk improvement or we're doing an ADA curb ramp, oh gee, I don't have to reach out to the county. Be aware that one of the important things is that when you need to go build either replace curbing or put in a curb ramp, you need to construct about 1.5 feet out into the roadway, which is actually potentially could be the county's right of way. So that's the reason why we ask, because sometimes counties own curb to curb, if not beyond the curb to curb, and that's their right of way. So that's technically their property. So please be aware that if you're along a county route, do your due diligence and try to get their support on an application. That's very important. The other thing is we spent time in trying to update the cost of projects for 2020 or pieces of projects for 2022. So please do go in and look at that in our I think it's on saferoutesnj.org, and I believe we have a link on our website for the DOT Local Aid Resource Center. Go and take a look at that. That's another thing. And then also we may not have training sessions running throughout the summer at Rutgers CADE, but do be aware they're going to come up in the fall. So if you don't see it right this minute, they are scheduled starting in early September, late August, early September again. Okay. All right. So 2 questions. It seems like some costs absorbed by municipalities can be funded by another grant or private effort, or does the cost have to be absorbed by the municipality's budgets? I think we kind of addressed that. And I think the other question was from you, I also believe, that asked about, is it 80% we have to fund 20? Basically, in the state of New Jersey, we actually use toll credits, so we actually fund 100% of the application. Less anything that is not considered an eligible cost. Okay, for the application. If streetscaping in a historically registered village, all aspects of the project would require SHPO. That's kind of a situation. It would actually depend upon what the app, if it was actually a community that was eligible for the National Register and they had an application that was put in, you would have to take a look at that. And I think they would also be reviewing historic structures that would be, and archaeological areas that would be over 50 years or whatnot. So it's going to depend upon the project and the amount of disturbance, but they'll most likely will have to get at least a cursory review by the SHPO. So let's see what else we have. So somebody said, for reference, I've attended a one-on-one meeting yesterday. It was really helpful. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. And if you have any other additional questions, we have in our handbook information where you can contact our NPOs that I noticed. John's here with us. We have representatives from CPA attending as well out in the audience. So please do reach out to them. And also our 4 district offices are available for additional clarification. Their contact information is in our handbook. And also, again, our DOT Local Aid Resource Center is available. Again, additional, grant questions, there, reach out to DOT Local Aid Resource Center and the Bike Fed Center. They can help. Let's see what else. Does the municipality have to utilize a DOT appointed consultant for design once awarded? No, they don't. They can go on their own. You just won't be, unless you, so you can apply for design funds through the application process here, but be aware, if we give you funds and you want to pursue using the federal funds that we gave you for design, you're going to have to do a Brooks Act compliant quality-based selection for that consultant. So that means it's quality-based. You can't consider price as a factor, and you will need to do that. And you'll have to go through that process on your own, select a consultant, and then the funds will be provided once again on a federal reimbursement basis. So it's difficult. That's why we typically go ahead and actually do the pool. We do that work for you because it's a fairly complicated process. Let's see, we have provided the link to the Rail to Trails basics that folks had wanted to. That's the application examples. Mentioned not applying for a completed or partially completed project. If we've already completed design and permits are pending, would upcoming construction costs be eligible? Absolutely, yes. Yes, they would be. So again, talk it through at a one-on-one. Or you can actually ask a general question. Again, reach out to our district office. They will reach out to headquarters, the division office, if there's a clarification. They know me well. So, okay. Lots of good information in the webinar. We're glad you like that. When will the presentation be made available so I can catch up with Miss Info? Leanne, thoughts on that?
Oh, Leanne, you're muted.
Leanne, you're muted.
Thank you. I thought I had the unmute. I must have misclicked. It takes a moment to render this presentation and get it cleaned up to put up on our webpage. But we hope if all goes well with the rendering, we'll have it, soon to the end of the day today, but by the end of the day tomorrow at the latest. So just keep checking back. It'll be on our Safe Routes New Jersey SafeRoutesNJ.org website, and as soon as it goes up on that website, then it'll be transferred over and linked on the Local Aid Resource Center website. We do work behind the scenes to work together. So just give us a few days, maybe by the end of the week, take another look back, and all should be there. And if you want to sign up for the next two, so John, can you go ahead and go to the next slide?
Hang on, I'm just going to continue.
Yeah, and then
the rest
continue,
of the
because
questions.
there was a question about webinar dates. So I know we talked about a webinar in September in the beginning. We, as these things go, we just got permission to add that third webinar yesterday, so we weren't able to add that to the slide presentation today. We are getting that registration set up also by the end of the week. So we definitely have the registration open and ready for the July 21st webinar, which is the next one. It looks like we're getting the final pieces put together, but our last webinar will be September 15th, which is a Thursday. And we're looking to have it from noon to 1:30, so a slightly different time period. So we will be getting that information out. It wasn't something we could put in at the beginning of when we were setting things up, but now we finally were able to get all the pieces in place so we could offer the third and final webinar. But in the meantime, you'll be able to go back and look at this presentation. And so we'll let you know, and you can sign up to our Safe Routes newsletter through our website. I'll put the link in the chat if you want to make sure you're notified when that third webinar becomes available.
Okay, thanks, Leanne. I'm going to go back to the questions real quick. I see one here. Okay. So there's a question about, grant writers and whatnot. We don't, advocate any of that. That's a business decision. It needs to be made on a local level. So we have no list. We don't continue that. We really are only out here to provide guidance and administrate the application. So, and again, Leanne mentioned in the chat, a good place to go for good examples, and we provided some good tips and strategies within today's webinar of how to apply. Again, yet other little questions, please reach out to folks that we have discussed today. And we will be posting the other webinar dates for you. Let's see what else. I think that's it. I think that's all we have. And there's a newsletter that folks that can apply to. Is there anything else we need to go over, folks?
So John, you can go to the last slide. I just like to recap with a reminder about these application dates. Oh, we lost the bottom one, but the webinars, we'll be adding the third webinar in September. As these things go, sometimes it just takes a little time to get everything approved and all the funding in place. So we're good to go, and we'll be making that announcement shortly. Remember the mandatory one-on-one meetings, and remember November 3rd, that's our deadline. So don't hesitate to start today. This is a lengthy application process. This is for a lot of money. Take your time with it. Get your partners together. Get your resolutions of support started. Do not wait to the last minute on this. There's a lot to pull together. This isn't something you're going to be able to successfully make it to November 3rd. See, it feels like a long time away. It isn't for an application like this. There's a lot of people on vacation over the summer, so make sure you've got your meetings in place now so that you can be working on this application all through the summer and into the fall.
And as Leanne mentioned, do spend the time. I think folks, the whole resolution process takes a fair amount of time, and also coordinating with the counties, because all that Leanne just mentioned actually applies to them as well. So it takes time.
And I will throw in this: if you do use a grant writing consultant, and many towns do, be sure to check their work. I'm not disparaging any grant writer by any means, but you know your town best. You know what you need. Make sure that you get that application draft from your consultant in time for you to review it and make sure all the information is accurate before it gets submitted. So just as another tip or strategy. A lot of folks asked about contact information. Again, I'll mention the Local Aid Resource Center for your specific grant questions. Please submit your questions directly to the Local Aid Resource Center. There's the phone number and email address. If you have questions about how to make it safer for walking and biking, or even a safe routes type question, that's where our resource center comes in to help. We can help guide you to the right resources and make connections even with your local transportation management association or your NPO, so that you can make sure your application is putting forth the best practice in making safe, accessible, livable facilities.
And we also, somebody asked us actually if we actually consider applications in order that they're submitted. No, we consider every one of them once we close. So if you submitted 2 weeks from now, it wouldn't matter. We'd still look at them, after the application of November 3rd, after the process closes or the application solicitation deadline. So please do spend the time, but don't forget to click, because Leanna mentioned it's 11:59 and 59. Closes.
Yeah. Yes. If there's not any more questions, thank you very much for attending.
Thank you.
I know it's been a lengthy webinar this morning. I appreciate you hanging on. Oh, we got one more question, Julie, real quick in the last few minutes.
I recommend you reach out to and schedule a one-on-one with a bridge replacement and state on rail trail. I would say probably yes. We'll have to talk about what the ins and outs were and what it would be, and where it is and whatnot. We have to look at it. So I definitely I would recommend you schedule a one-on-one due to the context of where that would be and whatnot.
Right.
So
and it would also need to be addressed ADA, even on a trail level too.
Right.
So
It depends. I mean, it's all depends on what you're talking about. So, okay. All right. Thank
Okay.
you, everyone.
Thank
We wish
you.
you the best of luck. And again, hopefully you got all the contact information. Have a great day. Take care and stay well.
Yes. Have a great day, everybody.